You felt it, right? That little nudge to say yes, or to buy something you weren't planning on, or to just go along with an idea. But what's the actual science behind that feeling? Well, today we're going to dive deep into the powerful science-backed techniques of influence. We'll look at how they work, and maybe more importantly, how you can spot them out in the wild. So let's kick things off with a term you've probably heard tossed around: dark psychology. I know, it sounds pretty intense, and honestly it can be. But what we're going to do is break down what it really means, according to our source material, so we can actually understand it. So what are we really talking about here? At its heart, dark psychology just refers to strategies that are designed to influence how people think and act, but in ways that are often really subtle and maybe not totally upfront. The key words to hang on to are subtle and deceptive. This isn't about ordering someone around, it's about shaping their decisions, sometimes without them even noticing. And look, before we get into the weeds, the source itself puts up a big flashing warning sign. The whole point of learning this stuff isn't to get a playbook for manipulating people, not at all. It's all about building your own awareness. Once you understand these principles, you can start recognizing them, and that empowers you to make your own choices, consciously. Now, you might be a little surprised where all of this actually starts. The foundation of pretty much all influence, whether it's for good or, not so good reasons, begins with building a connection. It's about establishing that initial bit of rapport and making someone feel like you see them and you get them. So our source lays out a few key techniques for creating this sense of trust and alignment. Everything from the simple act of using someone's name to the more subconscious trick of mirroring their body language. Let's break down how a few of the most powerful ones actually work. And what's so fascinating is just how simple these ideas are. I mean, think about the name drop. It totally works because hearing our own name just cuts through all the other noise, right? It makes us feel noticed in a good way. And then there's mirroring. It creates this subconscious feeling that you and the other person are in sync. And reciprocity, man, that one taps into a deep social instinct. If someone gives you something, even a small compliment, you feel this little urge to give something back. Okay, so once that connection is there, the next step is the ask. And it turns out, the way you actually frame your request can be just as important, if not more important, than what you're even asking for. This is where two classic and kind of opposite strategies come into play. This is just brilliant because it shows two sides of the same psychological coin. On one hand, you've got the foot in the door. You start by asking for something super small. Once they say yes, they've psychologically committed to being a helpful person. So when you come back with a slightly bigger request, it feels much harder for them to say no. But then you flip it. With the door in the face, you start with a huge, kind of crazy request you know they'll reject. Then when you follow up with your real, smaller request, it seems totally reasonable in comparison. They almost feel obligated to meet you halfway. Sometimes the most powerful technique is also the simplest. It's kind of amazing. But studies have shown that just sticking the word because into a request makes people way more likely to say yes. Why? Well, our brains are just hardwired to want a reason for things. If you say, "Can I cut in line because I'm in a huge rush?" that little "because" is often all our brain needs to hear to just go, "Yeah, okay, that makes sense." All right, now we're getting into the really juicy stuff. This is about harnessing or exploiting the mental shortcuts our brains use every single day. These are called cognitive biases, and they're basically the brain's way of saving energy. These techniques are so powerful because they work with our brain's built-in programming, not against it. Just take a look at these. Anchoring is why the first price a realtor tells you for a house sticks in your head and influences the whole negotiation. Scarcity is that classic limited time offer that taps into our FOMO, our fear of missing out. And loss aversion. Oh, this one is a biggie. We are fundamentally wired to feel the pain of losing something about twice as strongly as we feel the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing. It's a huge motivator. And this is a perfect example of how our decision-making can be totally railroaded. So you go to the movies, right? The medium popcorn at $5 is the decoy. It's a terrible deal. No one is supposed to buy it. Its only job is to sit there and make the $6 large popcorn look like an absolute steal by comparison. It psychologically pushes you to make the choice the seller wanted you to make all along. So, as we've seen, these techniques run the gamut from harmless rapport building to some pretty serious cognitive manipulation. And all of this brings us back to the most important question of all, doesn't it? The ethics of the whole thing. And this is the real takeaway. This is the whole point. Just knowing about things like the anchoring bias or the decoy effect is your single best defense against them. When you can spot these strategies being used in a sales pitch or in a negotiation or even just in a conversation, you can hit the pause button. You can think critically and make a decision based on what you actually want, not what you're being nudged to do. And listen, the source material itself ends right here on this very clear note of caution. It flat out calls these tricks potentially dark and manipulative. It's a powerful reminder that this knowledge really comes with a responsibility to protect yourself for sure, but also to make sure you're interacting with other people ethically. So ultimately, it all leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Influence, persuasion, it's a natural part of how we communicate. It's a tool that we all use every day. But after everything we talked about, it's clear that the line between influencing someone and manipulating them can be incredibly fine. So the real question is, for you, where do you draw that line?